4 p.m. and ask you to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Pleasure of the committee. Motion by Mr. DeMonica, second by Mrs. Teal. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. The chair voting yes, and noting for the record this evening that Mr. Hunter is absent. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes, regular meeting 7/10/2014, special meeting 7/29/2014, executive session 6/19, 7/10, enrollment report from 8/1, school police report 7/1, and residency truancy report 8/1. Pleasure of the committee on the consent agenda.
Move passage.
Thank you. Mr. Fiorello moves passage of the consent agenda, second by Mrs. Teal and Mr. DeMonica. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. Dr. Thornton.
Good evening. First, I'm happy to report, as you may have heard, Up With People is coming to Cumberland at the end of this month of August. And we had planned to have some folks from Up With People to come tonight to speak briefly, but I'm not seeing them in the audience as of yet. I would just reiterate that they are coming middle of this month. I was trying to come in with their host families, and we're looking forward to it. The show is finally at the end of the month, August 29th and August 30th. Secondly, on my report, enrollment, once again to give you an update, and it's interesting how this can almost change hourly. We can get students in, have students go out. Right now, I can tell you, as of 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock this afternoon, we're actually 29 students more than last year. It breaks out, we have one more student for pre-K5. We still have 14 more at McCourt than last year, 58 more than last year at North. At this point, given the staffing model, North I'm calling closed at this point, given the staff you have in the building. North has had more students in it in the low 7s, but the staffing right now is at its threshold, if you will. High school has 44 less students than last year, and that seems to be changing each day. So overall, as I said, we're plus 29 with a couple weeks to go. I can tell you historically, October 1 when we send the information to the state for enrollment, if we can keep trending in this direction, I think we'll be higher than we're seeing right now, it could be more than this. And as I always tell you, the enrollment projections, given the births and the housing starts as you move in, we should keep bucking this trend. We should be, I believe, right now, 4395 pre-K-12, and we are 4546. So we're 151 over the projection. So that's good news.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the funding formula and the BEP. I know tonight we'll be reconciling the budget. Dr. Thornton, the funding formula does work to our favor with additional students. Does that number, do you know if that gets adjusted in October? So if we have 40 more students than last year.
I don't believe, Alex, can you correct me, you wouldn't see more funding this year for FY15. You would get it the following year. Is that correct, Alex?
The following year.
But for a rough number, Alex, if you were to gain 30 students, do you have any rough numbers for us, what that would look like?
$250,000. And just with that, we certainly have quite a large influx of middle school students. And we had purchased Chromebooks. Are we prepared to deploy that for the additional students as well?
We are in our model. We actually had a contingency for extra Chromebooks in the model, so we have that all set.
Thank you. And continuing on with the funding formula and the BEP, we usually leave this as an open agenda item so that if folks have specific questions about that, we've kind of taken a little bit of a hiatus over the summer, so I don't know if anyone had some time to do some homework.
Madam Chair, is it possible that the school committee could get an update from our legal counsel in regards to what our responsibilities are with the funding formula and the BEP? Reading state statute, I see that there are some requirements that charter schools need to make to the Cumberland School Committee, and I don't see that happening, so I'd like to know what our legal responsibilities are, because we're approving a budget tonight that, quite frankly, needs to be looked at again. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're referencing the obligation that charter schools have with regard to budgeting practices for us? Okay. Dr. Thornton, got that? We can talk to Mr. Adams about that. Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Anyone else? I do also want to say if we are getting more students to the district, we certainly know that there's a local obligation. While we can grow things to scale, and it sounds like certainly North Cumberland Middle School is at its upper limit without incurring any additional expense, if the enrollment changes continue to move in that positive direction, it will certainly require an encumbrance on our part. So we need to keep the council aware of that so that there aren't any surprises. Anyone else? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is report of standing committees, payment of bills. Mr. Fiorello, are you pinch hitting this evening?
Yes, I am.
Excellent, thank you.
Fiscal subcommittee did meet, and we voted 3-0 to approve payment of bills of $1,431,612.83, and I would move passage of the payment of bills.
Mr. Fiorello moves passage of the payment of bills for $1,431,612.86. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Madam Chair, it's actually 83 cents.
Oh, my apologies. Almost got it right. Next item on the agenda is fiscal management subcommittee update. Mr. Fiorello, do you want to provide an update, or do you want to wait till we do the reconciliation?
Well, fiscal sub did meet, and we did discuss a lot of things, mainly the budget amendments, budget resolution overall. We also discussed the financing of brick work that's going to be taking place outside of the high school, as well as the financing for the energy projects that we've been discussing. But we'll talk about those resolutions later in the agenda.
Got it, thank you. And Mrs. Teal, Policy and Procedure Subcommittee.
Thank you. Policy met on Tuesday, the 12th, and I have 4 policies that I'll be bringing for you for your consideration and approval. There were a number of policies that we just didn't have time to get to, so we were tabled, and we'll deal with them later in September. And we did have somewhat of a lengthy discussion. We're beginning to consider a policy concerning school committee conduct. I forwarded everybody a copy of the drafts of those policies. I would suggest or ask that you read them carefully, and we will be discussing them. I think our next meeting, because of the election, is going to be, what did I say, September 23rd at 6:30. So if you have questions, anyone has questions, comments, concerns about any of those drafts, please come to that policy. And the rest I'll discuss later in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, Achievement and Communication Subcommittee update. We will be meeting not in 2 weeks on Tuesday, but we're actually going to meet on the Thursday before the next school committee meeting. Does that sound right, Mr. Mitchell? Dr. Thornton?
28th.
Yeah, that would be the next.
The next-
14th, right? Yeah. So we will be meeting on the 28th. We will be talking about high school guidance again. We're also going to be talking a little bit about Project Lead the Way. I know some committee members had some interest there. There was a 2-week professional development that our lead teacher had the opportunity to become a part of at Duke University, I believe, over the summer. So I think she's got a lot of really cool things to share with us about that. And lastly, I know I'm going to mess it up, learning maps, thinking maps. We'll be learning a little bit more about thinking maps, which some of our faculty have been participating in professional development over the course of the summer on. So some more good information around curriculum. That's good. Next item on the agenda, public hearing. We have some policies, I think, Mrs. Teal, I'll hand this over to you for their first reading, and some are amended policies.
Correct. I'll take the first policy. We created a new policy, B-12, or I'm sorry, B-2. It's actually called Code of Basic Management Principles and Ethical School Standards. This policy actually brings us in compliance with Rhode Island General Laws 1629.1, which requires each school committee to adopt a code of basic management principles and ethical school standards. The policy mirrors in its entirety the regulation, and on a 3-0 vote, it was approved in policy. So I would ask for a first reading of B-2, and again, the correct name is Code of Basic Management Principles and Ethical School Standards. The next three policies we tabled and are going to discuss them later in September, so I would ask that they be tabled and not read into the record at this time.
So Mrs. Teal moves to table B3, G12, and
G13.
G13.
Correct.
Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Salvatore. Any further? No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Someday I'm going to do that without saying that out loud.
And we also,
Go ahead.
and we also discussed G-9, building access. That was formerly the key control policy. That policy was brought up to date, given the new key system we have, and the new security system we have within our schools. And we needed to clean up some language regarding discipline, so that the discipline, it reads disciplinary action up to and including dismissal. So the policy has been amended. I would ask, and on a 3-0 vote, I would ask that it be read into the record at this time. Policy G-11, drug-free schools employee regulations. That is a policy that also brings us into compliance with RIDE, and it impacts the district's ability to receive federal funding. This policy needs to be, in effect for us to receive federal funding. That policy, again, was approved 3-0. It is an amended, so this is a first reading, or it only needs to be read once into the record. And then I-8, student promotion retention, it's pre-K through 12. That policy will take place of, there were 3 IK policies having to do with student promotion retention. This is now a much broader policy that discusses whether or not students will be promoted, retained, or accelerated through the grades, that the principals and the teachers will work in concert with each other to make recommendations to whether or not students, again, should be accelerated through the grade, retained, or promoted. And that policy was approved 3-0, so I would ask that that be read into the record. And finally, K-2, use of school facilities. I would request that that be tabled. We did not discuss that policy on Tuesday.
Mrs. Teal moves to table K2, use of school facilities. I have a second by Mr. Salvatore. All in favor? Those opposed? 6-0. So good.
That's it, and we'll take votes later.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a remark about school committee conduct. Throughout the years, there's been instances where we felt that a school committee conduct policy was necessary. And often, when you're in the most challenging situation, drafting policy related to that topic, when there's a little bit of tension, doesn't always work so well. And I compliment the committee on its collaboration and its support for the school department. And while we don't always vote the same way, we certainly have situations where we aren't in agreement. But I will say that largely we seem to be very motivated in the best interest of the district. So this is really actually well timed.
Yes, and I know there's been some questions and concerns about why it's necessary, and I'll just say from personal experience, who had came into an unusually advice of school committee that guidelines about appropriate conduct, especially as a new individual on the school committee, would have been extremely helpful. And I think you have to remember that we write policy not just for today, but for the future. And while I would like to think all of our school committees going forward will conduct themselves in the manner that I've grown accustomed with this school committee, which has been with respect, even when we've disagreed, but it's always been with respect, that unfortunately is not always the case. And I think it's important to put some formal guidelines and sort of expectations of behavior and how we would really want a school committee to conduct themselves as a leader in an educational system. So thank you for your consideration on that policy.
Thank you. So given that this is a public hearing, we'd like to open the opportunity up for public comment on any of the policies that we've discussed tonight. That would be B2, school committee conduct, and I'm sure I'm not reading all the titles correctly, B3, chairperson scope of responsibility, that one was tabled, G9, building access, G11, drug-free schools, and I8, student promotion, retention, and acceleration. Anyone here wish to speak on any of the policies that we've discussed or highlighted this evening? No? All right. So we'll call the hearing closed. And for the amended policies, this is the one and only hearing, and for new policies, we would have another reading. Is that correct, Mrs. Teal? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is comments from the public. Would anyone in the public wish to speak tonight? No? Everyone's still in their summer mode. Mrs. Malcolm, how about you? No? Just here. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Next item, new business. Vote to rescind teacher non-renewals for the 2014-2015 school year. Mrs. Fogel.
This was just a placeholder in case we needed to. At this time, we have rescinded all the non-renewals that we intend to, so I don't have anything for you. So there's nothing for you to vote on tonight on this matter. We've brought back all our teachers.
So even the 28th, we don't think there'll be any?
I do not. No, there won't be, because the teachers who we chose not to rescind was because of job performance or things like that, and so there would be no action. So there's no one waiting in the wings to be called back.
Terrific. Thank you. Next item, discussion and/or vote to approve resolution SCPR 7 2014-14. Repoint, replace exterior brick CHS buildings. Mr. Fiorello, I think this was in fiscal and...
Yes, it was. This was originally put on in case we were going to make a change to the resolution. After discussion, we did not make a change to the resolution. There wasn't a vote. I don't know if Alex wants to add anything to it.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. We put it on. If you recall, we had originally awarded this bid for some $119,000 and then decided to just do the brickwork and not the repointing at this time and just seal the building, which will keep the repointing from getting any worse, and with hopes that at some time down the road you would think the town will have to do some type of bond issue for school improvements. So we brought the price down from $119,000 to the $50,000. And I was going to go back and talk to the vendor because he still has to bring staging here, labor. We didn't know if the price would change. As of Tuesday, I hadn't heard from him. As of today, though, I have, and his price is going to be, has gone up, but I would ask that we amend the ordinance to not to exceed $52,000. It's in now at $50,000. And what happened is some of the bricks are a different color at the front of the high school, and he can get bricks that, you know, we want to match the color as best as possible, but the bricks he can get, they're either a little bit shorter, which will end up with, you know, a big grout line that look like staircase going up your side of your building, or he can get a little bit longer brick, which he's going to have the labor of cutting them just down a little bit. So there's a little additional labor that he's looking for in this job. So I would like to see us amend it to $52,000 instead of $50,000.
And that was something that was approved in fiscal that evening? It was not?
No, because
Okay.
we just got the price. The prior meeting of the fiscal subcommittee, it was approved not to exceed $50,000.
Okay.
So
That's
Going back to the vendor, not knowing if he would hope, if he could still do the work, you know, since we're taking 71,000 out of the project, if he could still do the other portions of the job for the same price. I wasn't sure, so I said, let's put this on in case. Well, as of Tuesday, I hadn't heard back from him, but as of today, I have, and there's going to be some additional labor. So I would recommend I'd like to get him started next week, because when they bring bricks up here that are cut, there's going to be a lot of red dust and all that stuff. I want to get it, I got to get it done before school opens.
Joe.
Madam Chair, I would make a recommendation to amend resolution SCPR 7, 2014-14 into the amount of $52,000 even.
And I think he's going to, one of the things that wasn't part of the job, but one of our chimneys in the back of the building is really, really pretty dirty. And when he's up here power washing, he told me he'd power wash that also and get that cleaned up for us so that it looks, look a lot better. So there won't be any cost for that. So
Maybe he'll do the sidewalk in front of the school too.
Is he also going to be able to remove the rust from the clipper shed?
yes, not the clippers, on the brick.
Yeah.
Yeah, he believes the material he uses will take all the rust and stuff off the building. So that's one of the goals of the power washer.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr.
I
Freeman.
would just ask at the next fiscal meeting if we can have new paperwork from the vendor laying out everything in the new amounts. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend SCPR 7, 2014-14 for an amount not to exceed $52,000. Did you second that, Mr. DeMonica?
Madam Chair, I will second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. And now I need a vote to approve the resolution as amended. Thank you, Mr. Fiorillo. Second by Mr. DeMonica and Mr. Denon. Getting nods tonight. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Next item, discussion and or vote to approve resolution SCR 2014-10, amended fiscal 15 school budget. Mr. Fiorillo.
Okay, well, on Tuesday night, we did meet again on the budget, and we discussed a lot of the new additions to the budget. A couple of the highlights are that we are adding a little time for the nurse up at Cumberland Hill Elementary, so they will actually have a full-time nurse now, as well as fully funding middle school sports. Also, there were just a lot of additions of special education teachers and educational supplies that were now in the budget. There were two amendments. One was the business office lease payment, which was at $69,797, was reduced to $0. And the facilities capital improvements had been reduced by $94,000. We're taking the $69,797, adding it to the facilities capital improvements. So that reduction now will only be $24,203. Both of those amendments were passed 3-0. Also, there was a change to the trash removal from $40,000 down to $25,000 as a result of prior year final payments. And we're sending that $15,000 over to playground maintenance, which will be an increase from $25,000 to $40,000 for playground maintenance. Our playgrounds need a lot of work, and we're going to use up that money pretty quick.
Thank you.
And I would move passage on the amendments.
Dr. Thornton.
Also, just 3 more things to mention that we did correct in the budget and add. That was the full-time assistant principal at community, that salary, the full-time AD, which was needed very much, and also the extra K teacher at Cumberland Hill.
And we also added music at the middle level Is that accurate?
Yes, that was part of the budget that was reconciled originally. This was the change orders, if you will. Yes, that's in the budget.
Agreed. And one of the things that we had talked about over the spring was the BEP audit. Can you talk a little bit about that? We didn't think it needed to be a budget amendment this evening because there was some discussion around the auditor being able to provide us with something.
Sure. Yes, we had talked, I think back around maybe May, June, about the auditor internally in her work getting this done for us at a cost that was pretty nominal. So we thought in the course of business we could get that done with our current auditor.
When do you think that would be done, completed?
I'll defer to Mr. Pignon on the timeline for that.
Well, I think she actually started a lot of the work in last fiscal year. It's probably, and then it kind of lost steam because the budget process of the town. It's probably mostly done. I can probably call her and ask her if she's ready to submit something to us.
That would be helpful. What would also be helpful is, the worksheet that we created with regard to the BEP, non-BEP core expenses. Once there's a good comfort zone with regard to no further action around the fiscal 14 budget, can you include that in our packet at some point?
Sure.
Are we close to that timeline? Not that I am expecting it to be completed. I'm just trying to get a sense of.
I'm pretty sure she's completed the work. I've had some discussions with her, and she's never really. She just hasn't. I don't know why she hasn't submitted anything to us, to be honest with you, but I'll find out. But I know she had completed the work, and
You're talking about the auditor.
the audit piece, right?
Understood. What I'm talking about, maybe something the auditor was intending to supply, but typically we've done it within the business office where we've tallied that. Are you expecting the auditor?
Oh, you're saying for the year that just ended?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll update that. We could do it. We could do it now on audited numbers, but in a couple of, shortly we will have audited numbers. So, if you need it, if it's something you want right away, they would just be unaudited numbers at this point. Probably won't change at all, but at this point, the audit's not complete.
Yeah, so the audit needs to be complete in order for us to get
And then,
accurate.
yeah, then they'd be the same as all the other years. They'd be audited numbers.
Understood, thank you. All right, so at this point, we have a motion to approve resolution SCR 2014-11, 1410, the amended school budget, and I do need a second. Anyone wish to second Mr. Fiorillo's motion? Mrs. Teal, Mr. Denon. I got almost a nod from Mr. Demonica, so we'll write him down too. Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Demonica.
during fiscal, I made a motion to cut the charter school funding by $927,806. This school district continues to incur costs for charter schools, and that's not being addressed by the Board of Education RIDE in regards to some of the expenses. Looking at one charter school, their tax return, I'm amazed that they pay a $213,000 management fee. And then the management company had expenses of $64,146 in lobbying fees that, in this day and age, no public school should be paying lobbyist fees. And finally, the management company formed a shell company to manage and own their schools. These are supposed to be public buildings. I would like to amend the budget and reduce it by $927,806 and put that money aside until RIDE determines if those expenses that are in here should be paid to the charter schools.
So you are making a motion to amend the resolution for the school budget to reduce that amount by, what was the amount again?
$927,806.
And you want to hold it in?
Abeyance, a separate line item until RIDE determines that the fees that were being charged are acceptable.
Sorry, I'm just making a note. So, Mr. Demonica moves to remove 927,806 from the charter school tuition and hold it in an abeyance or some line item until RIDE can provide us with an accurate statement about the fees charged are acceptable.
Correct.
I think we do work pretty closely with RIDE on the dollar amount, but I do understand your point. So we have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Teal. Other seconds? As I said to Mr. DeMonica earlier, this reminds me a little bit about some of the discussion around the monastery, where if we know we can't make this decision legally, because I do think we have a legal obligation to pay the charter school tuition, I cannot support it, although I do respect the concern that you have, Mr. DeMonica. I think that the challenge we've had is, as it's become really two districts, the obligation that we've had here has been pretty significant, and as we work to raise the achievement level and provide support for students and attract great administrators and leadership and teachers here, it's clear that competing priorities certainly are a continuing issue for us. So I don't know if anyone has any other remarks, or if we'll move ahead with a vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have 2 yes, 3 yes, and those against. Is that a yes or no? Against? So 3-3, so the motion dies. Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. So we go back to the resolution as presented. And thank you, Mr. Fiorello, for your work this evening. Do we have any further discussion about the budget?
I would just like to thank my colleagues for fully funding the middle school sports this coming year. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? And those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda, discussion and or vote to approve resolution SCR 2014-11, energy projects financing. One more time?
Mr. Prignano, I believe, will discuss the actual financing of the energy projects, which was voted in fiscal sub with a 3-0 vote.
Yes, thank you.
Back again. As mentioned earlier, this lease financing is to finance the projects that we want to do, the 2 boilers, one at the Trans Building, one at North Cumberland Middle School, putting in energy management systems into, or repairing energy management systems that became in disrepair in the mid-90s, I guess, that exist in Ashton, Community, and I think BF Norton's the other school, as well as some winterization of some of the buildings or whatever. This was part of, if you recall, the history of this. It started out as a project of about $1,800,000. We put energy management systems, if you recall, in all our schools, whatever. But when RIDE continued the moratorium on issuing new debt, we basically scaled the project way down, and we hope that in May that moratorium will be lifted so that we can get, you know, school aid, school construction aid reimbursements back to us for doing these projects. Anyhow, we went out to bid for lease financing on this $638,000 worth of projects. We got 3 bids in, and municipal leasing consultants at a rate of 2.49%, an annual cost of about $137,056 a year, for a total cost over the 5 years of $685,282.75. So that's about $46,000 in total interest over the 5 years, and a very attractive rate of 2.49%. So this will give us the funds to complete these this first phase of energy projects that we want to do. And I think there was an attachment, that everyone should have that, Cindy had. So if you have any questions on.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Prignano? No, I think we talked about it at length, and most of us were there at fiscal the other day. Pleasure of the committee on this resolution.
Motion to accept or to approve resolution SCR 2014-11.
Mr. Fiorello moves to approve the resolution. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Next item, discussion and/or vote to approve deleting the following policies. Mrs. Teal, these are slated for deletion this evening, or do you want to table?
We can re-delete these policies, but I believe we've already deleted them. But if we want to be absolutely sure, I'd be happy to make a motion to delete IKE retention at the middle school level and IKE retention at the elementary grades, because they are going to be replaced by a policy that student promotion IA.
Understood. So Mrs. Teal moves to really delete IKE retention at the middle school and elementary grades. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Salvatore and Mr. DeMonica. Popular killing of policies tonight. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Now they're fully, completely deleted. I would now like to make a motion to approve. Would you like me to take them in a group or individually? Happy to do
We okay with them together?
together?
Mr. Salvatore.
One's table.
Yeah, only to separate the table.
Okay. So I'll do the table one first. K-2, use of school facilities. We tabled earlier. We did not discuss it, and we will discuss it in September. So motion to table.
So we're still on item F right now, so these are the amended policies. No worries. At least we're not having to use all of those letters, jumbled letters anymore. Okay, so Mrs. Teal made a motion to table K2, use of school facilities, to the September meeting. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And those opposed? That motion carries 6-0. And so the next three you'd like to take together?
Yes, the following three policies are amended policies, so they've been read into the record once, and that's all that's required. And they are G-9, building access, that is formally the key control policy, that, as I mentioned, have been updated to reflect the new security system. G-11, drug-free school employees regulations, that brings us in compliance with RIDE and general laws. And I-8, student promotion retention, which replaces the two policies that we have now deleted numerous times. And on a 3-0 vote, those policies were approved in subcommittee, and I would like to make a motion to approve them.
Mrs. Teal moves to approve G9, G11, and I8, and that's seconded by Mr. Salvatore. Any further discussion? Quick question on the key control policy. So everyone has swipes now? There are no longer keys to the building?
We do still possess a grand master key, but really there's no need to have it. We will have it available, but we have a swipe system that takes care of everyone's needs externally. Even the janitorial staff, that's where fully online, they would swipe in, and then swipe into a lockbox in the building for their janitorial set, for their shift, put it back in, log it down, and go home.
And faculty are limited time of
Faculty,
day?
based on what your need is. Alex may be 24/7, 7 days a week. A teacher, maybe 7 to 5, Monday to Friday. It can be changed as the need arises. You simply tell someone in the department, and we change your access, and you're in.
And that could change for like a weekend activity that a teacher may have with the student?
Anytime.
Terrific. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. So in the next group, I would like to table B-3, G-12, and G-13, as we did not discuss them at Tuesday's meeting.
So Mrs. Teal moves to table the policies as reflected. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Denon and Mr. Salvatore. All those in favor? Those opposed, and that motion carries 6-0. So we just have B2?
And B2 really is a first reading because it's a new policy, so there is no vote this evening on this policy. It simply needed to be read into the record.
Thank you, so we'll take no action.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, personnel recommendations. Mrs. Vogel. We're moving right along tonight.
So thank you. So I have several, it's August, so I have several personnel recommendations for you this evening.
I just need you to speak into the microphone
I'm sorry.
because if you've ever sat up here, it's like sitting in an airplane hangar. You can't hear a thing.
Is this better? I always feel like I'm
Yep.
too loud.
That's
So I have several personnel recommendations for you this evening. I'm going to take them in groups as we usually do. So first we have 2 resignations. So I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the resignation of Travis Drappy, PE, APE health teacher, system-wide, effective June 30th of 2014, and Sarah McClellan, social studies teacher at North Cumberland Middle School, effective June 30th of 2014.
And these are resignations.
They are.
Thank you. Pleasure of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. DeMonica. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. And I have one retirement. So I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the retirement of Mary Elizabeth Ricasino, media specialist, system-wide, effective June 30th, 2014. Ms. Ricasino has been with the Cumberland School Department for 28 years, so we thank her for her years of service.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Salvatore.
is Ms. Casino here?
She is not.
I'd like to thank her for her service. It's an excellent 28 years. It's an accomplishment. Thank you.
Almost as old as you. Pleasure of the committee. Motion by Mr. Fiorello. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Teal and Mr. Denon. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0.
And I have a number of appointments, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them, they're alphabetical. Because they're all teachers except for one, I want you to know that all the co-pays would be 22%, so I'm not going to read that. They're all full-time unless I tell you otherwise, so we'll go that way, so try and speed it up a little. So, and if one of the candidates is here in the audience, I promise to point that out. I hope I have them all. So I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the following appointments. Anais Arias, special educator at North Cumberland Middle School, effective August, and I guess they're all effective August 21st, 2014, so I'll leave that part out too. She comes to us as a step 1, and Ms. Arias is here. If you want to stand up just for a minute, so she's here. Marissa Brazil, science teacher at Cumberland High School. She will be a .6, and she comes to us as a step 1. She was not able to be here tonight. Lauren Burchinsky, kindergarten teacher at Cumberland Hill Elementary School. She is a step 2. Elena Carnavale, special educator, severe and profound at Garvin Elementary School. She's a step 1, and she is here in the audience. Sean Connolly, social studies for a 1-year position. He'll be filling in for sabbatical at Cumberland High School. He is also a step 1. This is the one non-certified teacher. So I have Allison DeStefano, who is a special education teacher assistant at BF Norton. She is also effective 8/21. I called it step 1. She's our newly hired, so under our step system through the contract, her copay is 10% under the new contract, so she's the only difference. She was unable to be here. I have Christina Gagliardo, social studies teacher at Cumberland High School, who comes to us as a step 3. And Christina is here and is a graduate of Cumberland High School and is happy to be back. Rebecca I'm gonna mess this up. Katzanek, math teacher at Cumberland High School, who comes to us as a step 1. Kyle Landry, science teacher at North Cumberland Middle School, who comes to us as a step 1. Brooke McDonald, special educator at McCourt Middle School, who comes to us as a step 1. John McNeil, social studies teacher at McCourt Middle School. He is a .7, and he comes to us as a step 1. Amy O'Donnell, who is a science teacher at Cumberland High School. She comes to us as a step 8. As you know, science teachers are difficult to find. Nicholas Oliveira, who is a special educator at Ashton Elementary School, who comes to us as a step 1. Patricia Pora, reading specialist, system-wide, although she'll be assigned to community school. She's a step 10 and she has a master's. Julie, and I think it's not Ryder, I think it's Ritter. She's a special educator in the ALP program here at the high school. She is a step 6 and she has a master's. Marie Ross, kindergarten teacher at Cumberland Hill Elementary School, comes to us as a step 4 and has a master's. Kara Scaling, who is a social studies teacher here at Cumberland High School, comes to us as a step 1. And lastly, Glenn Whitfield, social studies teacher at North Cumberland Middle School, who comes to us as a step 10. He will be the replacement for Sarah McClellan, who we were very sad to lose. So that's the end of my appointments, and I think I caught everyone in the audience.
Pleasure of the committee. Motion to accept the new hires by Mr. Fiorello. Second. Second by Mr. Denon and Mrs. Teal. Any further discussion? The last one that you read was a step 10. Was that replacing a step 10?
She was a step 8, so it was close, but we felt that Mr. Whitfield's, he comes from Chariho actually, and he had a lot of experience in something called the workshop model. So as an educator, I'm sorry, but which we found for the middle school level to be very, very helpful. He was a very highly regarded candidate, and we felt that based upon Ms. McClellan and what we were losing at North, that it was worth it to bring him.
And Mr. Connolly, I think is a CHS alum?
Yes, he is as well. He was. I felt that I should have mentioned. He really wanted to be here, but he was unable. He helps run the town camp, the rec camp, and had some things that he had to finish up because it's ending. He is a graduate, just finished at St. Anselm, and is so excited to be here. He was in my office for an hour, very happy. So we're very happy to try and bring our Cumberland High School alums back, especially when they have that pride in Cumberland High School.
That's very nice.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Whitfield is a Cumberland alum as well.
Oh, he went to North Cumberland Middle School, that's correct. I teased him because he did leave us to go to Mount St. Charles, but he did go to North Cumberland Middle School.
We'll have to tease him a little bit about
That's
that
right,
as well.
that's right.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion carries 6-0. Congratulations to all the new hires. Look
Thank
forward
you.
to seeing you in September.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Next item is school committee comments, school liaison reports. Does anyone have anything to report this evening? Mr. Fiorello.
In the last few weeks, the PT over at BF Norton has been painting a number of classrooms for a lot of the teachers. They have done a total of 12 classrooms, I believe. There were a lot of volunteers, most notably the Klusnick family, as well as others, but also the two custodians at BF Norton were also very helpful to the PTO. And I just want to say thank you to the PTO for painting a lot of classrooms that really need it.
What color?
Don't ask me questions.
Madam Chair.
Mr. DeMonico.
Dr. Thornton, this weekend is the book bag giveaway at the BF Norton.
I believe Saturday.
So for the public, the book bags are available at BF Norton.
Do you know what time?
I believe it's 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock.
9 to 1. And they also have other activities.
Buttons to Clown will be there. This is a, not just Cumberland, it's also the surrounding communities. So there'll be a lot of people there, a lot of events. I believe Sodexo will be providing food, I believe.
Yeah, they have a little barbecue, and they also have area
I think they do
the
like face
health
painting
service.
also. Yeah, there's a little bit
Boys
of everything.
Club comes.
It changes, I think, from year to year, really, but it's a nice event. Families like to come out. It's a good time.
Very nice. All right, Dr. Thornton, I think we have executive session this evening.
Yes, we do.
Excellent. Okay. I need a vote to go into executive session for discussions of items referred to in Rhode Island general law. And I will state for the record, before going into executive session, the school committee shall state for the record that any persons to be discussed pursuant to the subsection 1 have been notified, and this statement shall be noted in the minutes of the meeting. The items on the agenda are personnel matters, exception 1, employee A, CTA ICSI, negotiations, litigation, exception 2, CTA ICSI. And so I need a vote to go into executive session. And that is made by Mr. Fiorello, second by Mr. Salvatore. All those in favor? Those opposed? That motion carries 6-0, and we will adjourn this meeting once we return back from executive session, but folks don't have to hang around if they don't want to. Thank you.